Today on Hearts of Heroes, a Category 4 hurricane slams into the southwest coast of Florida.
For about 9 hours, 155-mile-an-hour winds. It was devastating.
Leaving catastrophic damage.
Fort Myers Beach essentially was wiped off the map that day.
People are just walking around the island in shock.
But heroes are on the way.
There was boats inside of houses. There was trucks hauled 3 miles off into the marsh. Our main job was to start to get people off the island.
These heroes bring saving lives to unimaginable heights.
When it comes to hurricanes, if authorities ask you to evacuate your home, it is critical that you listen. Because once a storm hits, it can be hours or even a full day before it's safe for the first responders to get to you. The storm can also wipe out the only accessible escape routes.
When Hurricane Ian destroyed a causeway linking Sanibel Island to mainland Florida, residents who rode out the storm found themselves trapped on the island. But thankfully, heroes were prepared to fly in and save the day.
Fort Myers is on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and in the heart of this community, you'll find Florida Southwestern College.
Florida Southwestern State College is the largest college in Southwest Florida. It has about 16,000 students.
We serve a vast population covering a 5-county area equivalent to the size of the state of Connecticut.
Being that we're the largest college in the area, we have a large impact on those surrounding us in the community.
Just off the coast of Fort Myers is the island of Sanibel. This sleepy community is home to about 6,000 people, and they've got a wealth of animals like birds, snakes, and alligators.
It's a sanctuary island, so the wildlife, they're protected there. So when no one is out and about, they come out.
The only thing connecting Sanibel to the mainland is one single bridge called the Sanibel Causeway.
That is the lifeline of Sanibel Island, that bridge.
In September of 2022, everyone began preparing for Hurricane Ian.
It was first reported that it wasn't even going to be close to Sanibel or this area, except for one model. One model seemed to always be right around us. So we prepared ourselves as it was going to be coming for us.
The students and staff of Florida Southwestern College started evacuating the campus.
We were preparing and planning to address the impact of the hurricane.
Meanwhile, police and fire departments on Sanibel Island began putting a plan into action.
We get all of the vehicles, our boats, patrol cars, everything off the island, just in case anything happens, to keep them safe and ready.
On September 28th, Hurricane Ian bludgeoned Fort Myers and Sanibel Island.
You're standing at the epicenter. This was ground zero.
This storm was 12 hours of eyes wide open, nonstop. We could see through the news media that the island was getting hit. And we saw how Fort Myers Beach was just getting hammered.
It was horrible seeing the families, our own staff climbing up to their attics as water rose in their homes. We had people's homes washed away.
Once the storm surge retreated, the extent of the destruction became clear.
Fort Myers Beach essentially was wiped off the map that day. Buildings just razed to the concrete foundation, just gone.
The campus of Florida Southwestern College took a major hit.
We had 30 roofs just ripped off, windows blown out, doors blown in, trees everywhere.
We had a significant amount of debris and damage across the campus where you could not transport or drive around the campus.
It took your breath away. You thought, how are we going to come back from this?
But Sanibel had even bigger problems. Not only were homes and buildings obliterated, but the storm had wiped out their lifeline.
You could not get from the land to the bridge. There was just nothing there. You couldn't drive. You could do nothing to get over that bridge.
To make matters worse, Ian knocked out all cell phone communication to the island. There was no way of knowing how many people were injured or needed help.
With the causeway wiped out, the only way to rescue the trapped residents would be by air.
It was shocking. It was like, what are we doing now?
Coming up, rescuers search for survivors.
There was boats inside of houses. There was trucks hauled 3 miles off into the marsh.
But first, a tip to keep you safe when your inner explorer comes out.
After a disaster, you'll likely see condemned or abandoned buildings. Keep in mind that it's dangerous to explore these structures.
Buildings get condemned for a variety of reasons. They often contain broken glass, harmful chemicals, jagged wood, or even stray panicked animals. Any of these hazards can cause considerable harm.
The rule is simple. If the sign says stay away, don't play.
In August of 2022, Hurricane Ian slammed into the Florida coast. The bridge that connects Sanibel Island to the mainland was destroyed, leaving no way to get rescue vehicles to anyone who had stayed behind.
Right by the toll plaza, big hole. On the opposite end of a span, big hole. We knew that our work was cut out for us.
To get people off the island, they would need an elite search and rescue team. Enter the United States Coast Guard.
We got the call at 8 or 9 in the morning that we need to send everybody we have.
There was a whole island of people who had taken on catastrophic amounts of storm surge, and they were still stuck in their houses.
The phone lines were down, the power was down, so we weren't really getting any direct information.
A powerful storm can wipe out electricity and telephone service. So it's important to always have emergency supplies on hand, like flashlights, food, and water.
With no way to communicate with anyone who might be in trouble, the Coast Guard had to do flyover searches.
Most of our tasking was just to go over Sanibel Island and look for anyone who was in distress, in need of help, and could potentially use our help.
Once they reached the island, the crews saw the magnitude of the damage that Hurricane Ian had left behind.
There were homes on fire, collapsed homes, cars moved across streets, boats in places that I've never seen them before. The devastation was wild. Like picket fences, just toothpicks. Some houses had all walls ripped off. There was boats inside of houses. There was trucks hauled 3 miles off into the marsh. I've been in the Coast Guard for 14 years. I've done a ton of search and rescue, but I haven't responded to a hurricane of this magnitude. Our main job was to start to get people off the island.
But the floodwaters posed deadly threats.
I didn't know that alligators were on scene until we're flying over the neighborhoods looking for survivors.
And I saw multiple.
Probably more than 10.
Big predators, big animals.
Despite the dangers, they knew they had a mission to complete.
We got to a point where we were canvassing the neighborhoods and just looking for people signaling.
It didn't take long to find people in jeopardy.
The first people that we hoisted were an elderly couple.
That couple didn't have power or cell service, and they didn't even realize that the bridge had collapsed and that they were completely stuck on Sanibel Island.
So, rescue swimmer Tyler Kilbane was lowered into a clearing.
All the trees around their house had fallen, so to get in, I had to climb up and under big tree trunks and through a broken sliding glass window.
You got a pair of shoes with you?
Tyler was able to get the couple out of their house and prepare to hoist them up on the chopper.
I was able to
Get the wife loaded with her bag, send her up.
safely, and then to send the basket back down.
I was able to load him up.
Send him up safely, and then they'll just send me the bear hook and I'll hook into my harness. Come on up.
The crew dropped the couple off at an evacuation point on the mainland. But as they started to head back, they saw more people in danger in Fort Myers.
We came across a man walking down a street of a mobile home park, and he was probably chest to shoulder deep of just black water.
We thought,
oh man, this could definitely be something.
This was probably one of the most challenging hoists during the day. The trailer park had about 2 to 3 feet of standing water. There was debris in the water.
The water was very dark. We couldn't really see what was under there.
They were able to lower Tyler down to a safe location where he made contact with the man.
Getting on scene, talking to the man, he was shivering. He'd been in the water for probably 6 or 7 hours, walking around, checking on his neighbors.
The man let Tyler know that he, his wife, and their 4 cats needed rescue. But getting them out would be a challenge.
this was very difficult because
A basket is made to be hoisted on dry land, but when the water's 3 to 4 foot deep, it's difficult because I don't have a place to set the basket.
So it's gonna be loud and you're gonna get a little cold in the water, but we'll get you right to a shelter, all right?
Tyler found an area with shallow water. He carefully placed the basket down and started the hoist.
Set the basket in position and loaded the wife and one kennel with a cat in with her. And she's very terrified.
Tyler sent the woman and her cat up in the basket. Next, he sent the husband with 2 more cats. They flew the family to safety, but on the next trip to Sanibel, sunset was approaching and time was running out.
It was probably about an hour till sunset, and we knew there were still tons of people that needed help.
Coming up,
Fish and sharks. Different wildlife had entered homes, and these people were desperate.
but first, a tip should you ever want to pay it forward to first responders near you.
If you've been looking for a way to give back to your community, consider contacting your local fire department and asking about volunteer opportunities.
Many fire stations, especially volunteer departments, are often looking for community help. Whether it's logistics support, administrative assistance, fundraising, or community outreach, your help is often needed.
The commitment to being part of the first responder community is considerable. But this much is true: the positive impacts are immeasurable. After Hurricane Ian wiped out the bridge connecting Sanibel Island to Florida's mainland, the U.S. Coast Guard flew into action to rescue those trapped on the island.
I was covering Ian from the end of that very causeway, and I watched as the destruction extended for miles along the coast of southwest Florida. Rescues became a multi-agency endeavor. These first responders, though, would need a place to call home, and that is where Florida Southwestern College came to the rescue.
In the hours following Hurricane Ian, Coast Guard crews were flying in to get victims off Sanibel Island.
We're fuel limited, so when we're on scene, we have 10, 12, 15 minutes on scene.
Adrenaline definitely starts climbing as your fuel gauge goes further and further towards empty. We were running low on fuel, and we were about to turn around to go to the airport, and they saw somebody on a roof.
Tyler saw a young man standing on the roof of a home, waving a sheet of metal, and it caught our eye.
This one was a pretty confined area. There was tall trees, tall houses, a lot of debris, and a lot of flooding. We didn't want to get the survivors into any deep flooding areas. They had fish and sharks. Different wildlife had entered homes, and these people were desperate.
We immediately sent Tyler down to effect a rescue.
We hoisted Tyler down to a small piece of land in the front yard of this house.
It was the grandson, his grandmother, and a dog. They didn't have water, they didn't have food.
The boy explained that his grandma and him had stuck around for the whole night, and they were ready to get off the island.
Is there anybody else? No, it's us two and the dog. No one is dead.
He made the decision to send up the elderly woman first.
She was a little bit in shock.
All right, you ready to go for a ride?
Obviously, in the helicopter, we can't really speak too much, but I could see on her face that she was a little shocked at some of the things that were going on.
Her grandson and the dog followed together in the basket after she was already safely in the cabin. At that point, we probably had about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get them away so that we could go get fuel.
As the team came back to base for fuel, Sanibel's police and fire departments knew that they needed boots on the ground.
One of the biggest challenges was figuring out a way to get the first responders over to the island.
There's a group of us that met where we keep our boat. And we picked up the fire department chief and the assistant chief, and we all go over and we just start doing whatever we have to do, just assessing. People are just walking around the island in shock.
The first thing they needed to do was ferry people off the island.
We start getting everybody to the boat ramp and we start getting people off the island.
But in order to help more victims, they would need their emergency vehicles, which were still on the mainland.
The problem that we needed to solve was to be able to get the vehicles over to the island so that the police department and fire department could do their job.
That's when our sponsor, Belfort Property Restoration, stepped in.
We brought in local vendors that had barges. We brought in the right equipment and we barged everything over for the fire department, for the police department, so they were able to start doing their job again.
It was wonderful seeing that barge come across. And seeing that come across with all the other police cars on there was amazing.
Police and fire could now help people on the ground. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard kept making rescues from the air.
It was just an amazing thing to see them just hover and just drop down one Coast Guard, another one, another one. Words can't really put in how amazing that was.
Back in Fort Myers, Florida Southwestern College set up an emergency food and supply distribution center for those affected by the hurricane.
The college has always been a community-oriented college. We've always catered to the needs of the community, the students, our staff, our faculty.
But still, they wanted to do more.
Even though our campus was not usable for educational purposes, we had the ability to have space for the tactical vehicles, the swamp buggies, and next thing we know, we had 700 policemen and firemen sleeping in our arena underneath the bleachers at night.
Coming up, Florida Southwestern College is converted into an emergency command post.
We had helicopters and swamp buggies. It was something to see.
After Hurricane Ian ravaged southwestern Florida in 2022, hundreds of first responders descended onto Fort Myers to help with the rescue and recovery. But the city was torn to pieces, so there was no place to house them or the necessary vehicles and equipment. Florida Southwestern College stepped up.
We were contacted by the statewide Emergency Operations Center, and since we're so close to Fort Myers Beach, we worked in partnership with them to invite all first responders across the state to come and stay at our campus.
Even though the college had sustained immeasurable damage, they used whatever resources they had available to help their devastated community.
We had some buildings untouched, and that allowed us to be the epicenter for the recovery efforts of a lot of the first responders, the police, the fire, and the staging area.
All those first responder agencies, which was a total of 18 at the time, they were housed in our arena that was fully powered.
We had helicopters and swamp buggies. They were out there doing a lot of search and rescue for many days. And the helicopters were flying out of here, and we were the central point. It was surreal to see us become this right in the middle of a war zone.
Florida Southwestern College did all they could to help the community, but with so much damage to their campus, they needed help too.
It was somewhere north of $20 million of damage just on this one campus alone. Tremendous repairs had to go on.
After the storm, our sponsor, Belfour, began the rebuilding process.
Almost every building in here had some kind of damage, from a roof off to a window out to leaks, wind-driven rain. We noticed several roofs that were blown off from the high winds that came through. We noticed several trees down, palm trees. We noticed fences blown over, debris everywhere in the parking lots.
Within 4 months, Belfour accomplished a significant amount of work to get us open.
The progress on this campus, we're 90% complete. We've got a couple roofs left to do. We've got some sidewalks we need to finish.
In the days and weeks following Hurricane Ian, so many heroes stepped up, including Florida Southwestern College, whose selfless contribution was instrumental in assisting the rescue and recovery.
I think that's what's unique about us. That's kind of our DNA. That's who we are. We are rooted in this region, so it seemed natural.
Fort Myers and Sanibel Island can also thank the brave heroes of the U.S. Coast Guard, who tirelessly scoured the area, searching for survivors and saving countless lives. A short time after the challenging events, Sheldon Yellen from our sponsor Belfour Property Restoration joined the rescue team to get a first-hand look at the dangers of that job.
Wow, I can really see how you can miss somebody in distress here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to see from the sky, and even in perfect conditions.
And time is of the essence, and all of a sudden, you're struggling to actually see who needs you.
Yeah, it's the first challenge, is even finding the people that need our help.
Signaling is really important, and whether it's a white sheet or a white cloth or a flashlight or the flashlight on your cell phone or a metal object or a mirror that can give a reflective signal is critically important.
It is critically important to have something that will catch our eye from the sky to let us know, hey, I'm in trouble and I need some assistance.
I do this because I enjoy being able to give back to the community. Being able to protect people, I think, is important.
Ever since I was young, I knew I was here to help people. That's kind of my life's work. That's what I love to do. It gives me the opportunity to make a change and to bring impact and hopefully save a life.
Disasters can often bring communities closer together with a common goal of helping those in need.
With strength and resilience, the people and first responders of Fort Myers and Sanibel Island proved that when you work together for common good, anything is possible.
And it's been good having you with us.
We'll see you next time, right here on Hearts of Heroes.